Well, good morning and welcome everyone to this episode of Reliabilityweb TV and our Maximo webinar series. I'm Bob Francis, Research and Strategy Leader here at Reliabilityweb. We're excited about our webinar today with Aquitas. But first, let's get to some housekeeping items. How do we interact during the webinar today? We want to make sure we have everybody dialed in. Of course, coming up in our Reliabilityweb conference series, of course, just in a few weeks away is Maximo World. That'll be the topic of today's webinars. We get a little bit deeper into some more Maximo tips and trips and content, especially for the Maximo community from Aquitas. And of course, coming up in December is the International Maintenance Conference. You're not going to want to miss that. And we're looking way forward into 2026, almost a year out. But we're going to be in Nashville, Tennessee for the Reliability Conference and Technology Expo. So you're going to want to keep those on your calendar and plan now to attend all these upcoming events. How do we interact during Reliabilityweb webinars? Well, we use the chat function here in the Zoom tool. So if you have a question during today's presentation, please submit that using the chat function. And then we save the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar to do Q&A. Make sure you use that chat function to submit your question and we'll get to you for as many as we have time for. And your opinion matters. We're all about continuous improvement and always wanting to do better in our webinar series. So following the webinar, you'll receive information and an email. We'll ask for you to submit, if you see the opportunity to participate in that survey, submit your answers, give us a rating. We're always looking to improve, so we want to make sure you have that opportunity. And for those participating live in today's webinar, you'll be earning a CEU unit and your certificate will be sent to you post-webinar. Look for that email. Make sure you download your certificate. Coming up in our next webinar, that is out on August 12th, we're going to have Jack Poley with us. We're going to be talking about the state of fluid analysis in the 21st century. That's going to be a very popular webinar during a very busy week. So we look forward to you signing up and joining us for that next one coming up August 12th. And now let's get to today's content from Aquitas. We've got 3 speakers that are going to be delivering this awesome Maximo focused content. I'm going to hand it over to my buddy Ray Michek, who's going to do the introductions here. Ray, welcome. Excited to have the Aquitas team on, and I'll let you do the intros.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We're excited as always to be partnering with Reliabilityweb on this webinar, especially around Maximo, and it's unlocking reliability strategies within Maximo or Maximo application suite. Now, I think it's kind of interesting, Bob. This is a little bit near and dear to your heart, right?
It is. You're welcome, everybody, to go look at my LinkedIn profile. You'll see on there that I worked for Asset Performance Technologies. I was the chief marketing officer there. And part of that team that developed the APT application was the Asset Strategy Library, the world's largest library of failure data and recommendations, which we sold to an AI company. And then IBM was smart enough to buy that technology, the PM optimization, the RCM library, and that's now what's embedded in Maximo. So yes, I do have a little bit of insight and I'm very passionate about it. And I know the power of it, Ray, because I was part of helping develop and bring to market all of that technology.
Well, that is exciting indeed. It's cool to know that little bit of history. You know, just as a side note, it's hard to believe the Maximo World is right around the corner. There's still time for people to register if they haven't already done it. It's going to be a packed full agenda. And Terry had mentioned in that opening video about the user groups. We're actually leading the new to Maximo user group. So if you're listening, going to Maximo World, you're new to Maximo, get in on that session because that's going to be tips and tricks on how to leverage Maximo better. In fact, one of our speakers is going to be there presenting as well. So a quick note about myself. My name is Ray Michek. I lead our strategic alliances with Aquitas Solutions. I'm a Maximo legacy person back from 1997 and been with the product now, gosh, nearly 30 years or close to it. So that's a lot of history there, and I'll be at Maximo World. Hope to see you guys there. Quick note about Aquitas, just so you know who's leading this discussion. We're one of IBM's leading Maximo certified gold partners. we of course specialize in all things Maximo, from anything to do with implementation, deployment, licensing, of course, accelerators to help you get the most out of your Maximo implementation. In addition, we're involved with solutions connected to Maximo, like reliability training, augmented reality to aid in effective maintenance training, advanced condition monitoring, even smart exit signs. So over the years, we've worked with hundreds of Maximo customers worldwide. And just a final comment about us, it's we were recently acquired by TRM. So now we're part of the largest Maximo implementation and hosting practices in North America. And so that's exciting for us. Promise that's all the self-promotion, Bob. I'm not going to do any more of that. Quick note, this session is being recorded, so if you object, feel free to drop off. We hope you won't, because we have an awesome hour in store for you. We've got two great presenters, Steve Nornhold and Darren Kwasnicia, are going to be talking to you about reliability strategies in Maximo. Now, Steve is a founder of Data Sciences Group and is a seasoned asset management expert with over 30 years of experience helping asset-intensive organizations optimize their preventive maintenance strategies. He got to start with Maximo before I even did, right, Steve? You were 1995, and you've been a longtime partner of Aquitas because of your specialization on foundational data, like asset master builds and PM optimization. Your practical world knowledge often leads to you kind of establishing a trusted advisor status on any project you tend to work on. Darren Kwasnicia is our client solutions manager, and I've had the privilege of working alongside Darren for, I think 25 years or so. You're another Maximo lifer, which is exciting that you and I are still around. You're certainly the most capable person I know when it comes to demonstrating how Maximo can be applied to a customer's maintenance operation. Interestingly, I think it's your background prior to Maximo, where you spend time working with customers' reliability-centered maintenance or RCM strategies that provide insight to how this newer capability in Maximo actually can benefit customers. So our session's really exciting. It's going to dive into the newest capability of the Maximo application suite that provides access, as Bob said, this unbelievable amount of valuable content that, frankly, Maximo customers may not be aware of how to use. Or take advantage of what's available. So Steve and Darren will take you through exactly what reliability strategies are in Maximo, how to leverage the content, and possible next steps that you and your organization can take. Remember, we're going to monitor the chat for questions. If it makes sense, we'll stop through and answer a question if we need to, but for the most part, we're going to handle those at the end. All right, Steve, why don't you bring up your slides and get us kicked off?
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Bob and Ray, for the introduction there. Can everyone see my slides? Am I good to go?
Yeah. Why don't you put it in presentation mode? It'll be a little bit bigger for the audience.
Here we go. Okay, sorry about that. So the topics, the way we structured the discussion today is I'm going to first go through an overview of the reliability strategies library in the Maximo application suite. And then I'm going to go through leveraging the content of those reliability strategies. And then just a final slide on some thoughts on how to get started utilizing that library. So as Bob and Ray had mentioned, the application reliability strategies come with 25 years of data collection. It's one of the largest libraries that was out there. APT initially had developed those libraries, and IBM purchased those, and they are now in Maximo Application Suite. They have over 58,000 plus failure mechanisms. They break down by equipment class the types of failure mechanisms that can occur for assets. They also come up with 5,000 plus preventive maintenance tasks and recommended intervals that are organized by operating context. So that being what criticality or severe harsh environment, etc. They can be used and shown to be used to reduce maintenance costs. 20% maintenance costs, and 75% faster traditional RCM, primarily because you have a library. Like to always say it doesn't make sense to do a failure modes and effects analysis for a pump again when you have a library already there. It's a great starting point to augment that to your operating context. So it's a great library. Good thing about it is it has all this data. I guess the challenge is there is a lot of data. And that's part of the seminar today, just to get you introduced on how to start looking at what's there in the Maximo application suite, so that you can go about using it.
And Steve, I'll just mention, because it'll be inevitable, the question will come up. This is part of if you're mass 8.811 or higher. So if you're prior to that version, you wouldn't have access to this. And there's no additional cost, no additional points. It's just something IBM embedded in the product. It's there ready for you to use.
Okay. Yeah. So as I step through here, I chose just one class and subclass of equipment, and that's a centrifugal pump to go through. Because as I mentioned, it can be overwhelming, the volume of data that's there for your access. So we put together slides just following through the library for a centrifugal pump. And then these will obviously be shared with you. So it'll be a good reference just for one class of equipment. So how the library starts out is you choose an asset type. Again, I chose a centrifugal pump. The pumps are broken down in the library into centrifugal, hydraulic, positive displacement, submersible, vacuum, and just pump as a high level. So the point is it breaks pumps down into subclass types. After you choose centrifugal, it's going to give you an asset class configuration associated with that pump. And I believe this is important in that it's just not looking at a centrifugal pump. It starts to define the actual attributes of a specific pump and how that configuration is currently utilized as far as operating context. And so what I chose was a horizontal multi-stage barrel type, mechanical seal, radial sleeve, bearings, oil lubed. So barrel type, mechanical seal, radial sleeve, they're all attributes of a centrifugal pump. And then after choosing the centrifugal pump and the asset configuration, it's going to bring up the asset type, being centrifugal, and again, this configuration up here. It's going to further define actually what that boundary is for that asset configuration for the centrifugal pump. And it gives you a definition over here on the right. I'm not going to just read through it, but the point being is it clearly defines the boundary that you're looking at for that asset in that class. And then here on the left, it shows the strategy details, and it does a high-level overview. So for this asset alone, it's going to have 122 different failure modes and then 10 mitigation activities, which would be preventive maintenance activities or activities to detect those failure modes. I just chose then the failure mode tab, which is right next to the overview tab. When I choose failure modes, it'll come up with below the different failure mechanisms. So for this example, it came up with wear, improper OD, loose, and physical damage. And then once you choose one of the failure modes, I chose wear. It's also going to identify what type of influences, what are the failure influences in the field that could cause wear. This list here is cavitation, has improper axial positioning, normal wear, process fluid quality, stage to stage recirculation. So for a given failure mode, it's going to identify a list of failure influences that could cause that failure. And then when you choose any one of the failure influences, so I chose improper axial positioning. Over on the right, on the screen, you'll end up having a list of the mitigation activities associated with that. And it further defines what improper axial positioning is. It identifies the functional failure associated with it. And it even gives a repair time associated with it. And then possible discovery opportunities, which here are listed: inspection, vibrations, or performance test. And down below, there's going to be a list of activities, which each of those activities are going to be mitigation activities or preventive maintenance activities that you can perform to either detect the wear or the condition associated with this failure. And it also ranks the effectiveness of how effective that activity is. And just down here below, it shows refurbishment, which is more of a time-directed overhaul type activity, or then it has functional test, which is less effective. I guess the point is it does rank how effective the activities are against either detecting or preventing that failure. Going further into the mitigation activities, it adds also a level of criticality or operating context. So this is getting more into the RCM type content of how critical is the asset, what's the duty cycle associated with the asset, and what's the current operating condition, whether it's operating in a severe, harsh environment or mild environment. And these three drivers are going to be what drives the actual frequency that's recommended for the activities. So these activities, again, are shown down below. And then these are all toggle buttons in Maximo. As you change the duty cycle, say from high to low, you're going to end up with different frequencies. Same thing with severe condition, mild versus severe. It's all going to drive what the recommended library has as far as frequency. The next slide is just going through this, I guess, more in detail. I had mentioned the drivers are criticality, duty cycle, and service condition. It defines critical versus not critical, and then it defines duty cycle and then your service conditions. This slide is busy, but I'm going to walk through it to show you how this actually changes the frequency associated with based upon criticality. I'm looking here at oil analysis. So we were looking at wear associated with the pump failure mechanism. And as you look up here are the drivers: critical, harsh environment, severe. So these are all the possible scenarios for those three drivers of criticality, duty cycle, and operating condition. So that's what all these columns are up above. Based upon the given selection of whether it's critical, whether it has high duty cycle, low duty cycle, operating condition, these frequencies in the library are going to change. And I chose just a simple example and highlighted it up here that as the criticality or the severity of the operating context changes, oil analysis is going to go from a 3-month recommendation schedule versus 6 months versus every 2 years. So over here you see 2 years recommended. That's going to be for something that's not critical, has low duty cycle, and is in operating in a harsh environment. So I just want to demonstrate how these operating context, criticality, and duty cycle will drive in the library what frequency is recommended. And then, so within the Maximo application suite, this is what it actually looks like when you click on oil analysis. So this slide just shows if it's a minor criticality and is high duty cycle, severe operating condition. On the right hand, it's going to give the recommended frequency of every 2 years. And it also identifies a labor hour estimate associated with doing that activity. So this is a first start to building out the job plans, obviously. And down below, it will give you a job plan list of tasks that you could use to start building your job plan out. It brings out not so much specific operations, but gives you a library of tasks that you can use then to build out your job plans. So the strategies aren't a job plan. They're a recommended strategy that can be used then as a next step to actually build out your job plans. For this example, I just went through and clicked a different example this time, bringing up different possible mitigation activities. And I just want to show over here to the right, again, the library will take and give a ranking of how effective that activity is in preventing or detecting that failure mechanism. So the next step is I want to talk about the leveraging the content and the reliability strategies. Within Maximo, other than the reliability library, I wanted to bring out the fact that the library can be used to build out and augment and align key master data objects in Maximo. And those are the asset classifications and attributes, the asset criticality, failure classifications, building your maintenance job plans, and then also material items associated with assets. This first example shows I had mentioned that for a centrifugal pump, that there are many asset configurations. Many clients, I guess, struggle with the asset classifications, how granular they should be, and granular being, do we break it down just a pump versus centrifugal pump, or do we break it down further into what types of centrifugal pumps? So this library gives you the opportunity to help structure and align your asset classifications and also your attributes. So other than the asset classification of a centrifugal pump, it also identifies what type of attributes you would want to collect associated with that pump. In this example that I had used, it's a barrel type versus an axial split case. That's an attribute. It has a mechanical seal. It has a radial sleeve bearing. So it's defining not only the asset classification, but really the subclass of that asset classification and what specific attributes you would want to collect within Maximo at the asset record level. Similarly, obviously with the Maximo you have on the asset record itself, you can collect other drivers, obviously the asset criticalities out of the box. You can identify duty cycle and level of severity or the current operating condition of assets. So it helps drive how would you want to structure on at an asset per asset level? What information would you want to collect, and should you have it aligned, within Maximo with your strategies? Similarly, for failure classifications in Maximo, um, the failure classifications are broken down into problem, cause, remedy. You would recommend I we would recommend having your failure classifications align with your asset classifications. Being that if you have a centrifugal pump, you would want the problem causes and remedies associated with a centrifugal pump. And I'm just going to step through the library again. The library is an excellent resource to take and start to structure your failure classifications. The first one for problem, the problems in the library would be failure mechanisms. So you have wear, improper OD, loose, physical damage. And then for each of those problems, I chose wear as a problem, the causes which could come up. And then you could use the mitigation, the failure influences and the mitigation activities. You can use the library to come up with remedies. Now, a lot of the failure mitigation activities are preventive maintenance activities, but they also do in the library identifies remedies. And that remedy also recommends typically the material components, whether it's impeller, bearings, gaskets, seals, etc. It starts to identify what are the corrective bill of materials that would be required, which again should be aligned in your failure classifications as possible remedies. The job plans, I had mentioned the library is an excellent starting point to start building out your job plans. The library is not a job plan out of the box. It has recommendations on what type of activities you can perform, say during an inspection or during a given mitigation activity, but it doesn't actually have specific job plans. And I had mentioned that it has a level of effectiveness associated with those activities, which obviously is good to feed into your job plans. And the last item here is on material items. I'd mentioned in the library, the library includes typical failure mechanisms and causes and then mitigation activities. Well, in those mitigation activities, a lot oftentimes in the library, it'll identify the actual materials that you would want to have on hand for a corrected bill of material for that activity. And this example here that I'd been walking through was a centrifugal pump. So the example I just gave here is that you'll see in the library, it identifies seals, bearings, gasket, impeller. So that would typically, at minimum, be what you would want to have in your failure classifications identified, as well as associating those materials against the asset in the asset spec tab within Maximo. So I guess how to get started. I had mentioned the library is very large, just a huge amount of, great data and research over the years that's been put into one library. And I just put together one slide for how you could start using the library. And I just defined it as a proof of concept. And a recommendation is to choose a class or subclass of assets, and then extract your current as is Maximo data for that class or subclass. So, for example, for pumps, you would want to pull out what's your current asset classifications and attributes? How do you have those set up for pumps in Maximo? What are the current failure classifications you have for pumps? Look at your job plans, and then look at the material items that you currently have associated with pumps. And you could either do this at the asset class level or at the subclass level. So it depends, I guess, how mature your organization is as far as defining out classes and subclasses. But I guess the point being, this alignment should occur within Maximo across all these master data objects. And then you could utilize the reliability strategy library to really just do a as is and a gap analysis of what do you currently have in Maximo, what does the library recommend, and how does it differ? And the as is versus to be, typically the gaps you're going to find is, not the same attributes, not as granular, as far as asset classifications and subclassifications. And then the same thing with the failure classifications. You can compare what you currently utilize, or if you don't even have any, you can use it, to start to build out some problem cause remedies. And similarly for job plans, and then also for material items. And this type of work, I would say, is like a 4 to 8 week type of engagement that you can do internally just to get yourself familiarized with what's in the library and how can you use that moving forward. So those are all the slides that we had put together. If we could open it up for questions, and then I believe Darren and Ray can add in here. We can, if need be, we can actually pull up the library.
Well,
Hey,
fantastic.
Bob, before we go into questions, I'm just curious, Darren, maybe your perspective from working with so many Maximo customers day to day. Give a little bit of your perspective on what this all means and any commentary you have before we get into the questions.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, typically the big, I guess, inhibitors to full RCM studies is cost, it's availability of people, it's time, it's resource intensive. And there are definitely assets in your environment that you need to spend that level of effort and analysis on, but there's a lot of assets that you could get a quick win reliability strategy set up using a tool like IBM's tool. So if there are a class of assets that you have, you search the database, you determine whether the information exists in the reliability strategies library, and again, it's a driver. It gives you your maintenance strategies. You can set up your PMs, you can set up your maintenance procedures related to that. You can start identifying frequency, criticality, risk, the whole thing, again, very quickly, like Steve mentioned, 75% faster. So I think that's the trick. There are definitely going to be assets where you want to be more critical and you want to do full studies, but this library definitely gets you going quickly, and it's an effective tool.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Well, fantastic, team. And Darren, I think you alluded to this in the chat. I think clarification on versions, is this all available back in 7? If I have the oil and gas option, can I add it? I suggest we start with that clarification there.
Sure. So the tool is going to work with MAS, the application suite version 8.11, And 8.11 includes manage, which is Maximo versions 8.7, 8.8, and 8.9. So from that point forward, you would have access to reliability strategies. If your versions prior to that, you would not have access to the reliability strategies tool. HSE has no implication. If you're running HSE and you are on those versions, you'll definitely have access to reliability strategies. One thing that HSE does is in the asset tool itself, you actually have the ability to define, there's a tab called failure analysis, and it actually gives you the ability to identify your failure strategies, your mitigation, your tools that you're going to put in place, your failure modes, how you address it. So stuff that you learn through reliability strategies can be documented against your asset in the HSE tool.
And Darren, I think in the later release, like in 9, they made there were some usability features that they added to reliability strategies over the previous releases. So
there was, yeah, when the tool was first embedded, it was literally that. It was almost just a partial connection to Maximo. There was no integration. There was no shared communication. So as the tool matures, obviously development time, it's going to be more and more embedded within Maximo. And you're even going to have the ability to add your own strategies. So right now the database is contained, it's got all this information, but you will actually have your own customer-based database. So if you've got unique assets that aren't within this library, or you've got extensions to the strategy that you want to define, it will be in your own customer database, independent of what's in the reliability strategies database. So it will know where to look to find the strategy for you.
Yeah, Darren, I see that sort of topic coming up consistently. Sorry, Ray, I just wanted to hit that point about are the strategies editable? There's one of our questions was, can criticality be tailored to the client's use definition? So maybe we should clarify that part of, is it just the library, or can I make some edits to those strategies that are applicable in my deployment?
Yeah, so you can definitely make configurations to the overall strategy, identifying failure modes, putting your own, response to failure, your own PM, your own job plan information. The one thing, and I did see that question come up, I don't know how configurable the criticality ranking is going to be. I feel just in my mind that that's probably fairly static, but what I'll do is I'll take that question away. I'll talk to IBM development and see if that's on the roadmap to actually make that configurable. So I don't have a for sure answer, but I can definitely figure out what it is.
Hey, Bob, while we were talking about the changes to reliability strategies, one of the things, I'm actually in the IBM Innovation Center today, where we're having a large partner summit going over product roadmaps and development, and RCM came up. So it's exciting. One of the things they're doing is they're moving the reliability strategies from a product management side under the APM team, the asset performance management team, so that it's more closely aligned with all those tools that are giving and feeding information with the strategies to solve those problems. So it's rather exciting to see what IBM's doing and taking a broader look as opposed to very compartmentalized development.
So guys, if a client out there, someone who's in a regular Maximo user, has deployment, has reliability engineers, but they don't have this new capability available in this latest release, maybe let's clarify what are the implementation and configuration support that's needed to get someone who doesn't previously have access to the strategies library to get them up and using it.
So really it comes down to having that correct version of the application suite in Maximo. If you fall within those parameters and have that, it is really part and parcel of the tool set. You'll have to, from a IT perspective, they'll just have to make sure that they turn on reliability strategies in the application suite. And from there, you will see it. When you go into Maximo and you search for reliability, it will be a new application that'll come up, be accessible, just like the screenshots that Steve showed. Yeah, it'll be there and ready to go. There's nothing extra, no licensing, no special security parameters. There is a security group by default for reliability. You just have to make sure you have access to it. So it's very easy. It's not locked down at all.
Right. a very technical question. It feels like, Darren, but someone wanted to know, does the library handle transformers, and is it based on industry specific or generic to all assets?
You know what? I will take a quick look at the library and I'll tell you right now if there's transformers in there.
I'm fairly confident there is, Darren, just because the story of the origin of the library from when it was first developed, it came, out of some EPRI work. So it was heavily influenced in its original versions coming out of the power generation and power
Utility.
distribution. So a lot of transformers were in that original set.
Yeah, I see CTs, so current transformers. I see general transformers, PT potentials, and power transformers. So it looks pretty intensive when it comes to transformer coverage. Lightning arresters, yeah, it looks like it's fairly comprehensive for utility.
Yeah, in the second and third generations, as the library was growing over the years, then we brought in subject matter experts and peer review from oil and gas, from chemicals. I mean, it broadened out the library to cover a vast array of industries, asset categories, asset types. So pretty confident that remember what Steve said was so important about that as is and to be. So many people in my 25 years in the industry team, that early conversation was, yeah, we have a handle on the basic blocking and tackling, but we don't trust our data, and we're not sure, what our real as is state is. So how could we use that? And that was that was one of our answers of how the power of the library was it's so comprehensive that many of your assets are going to be covered in here, or at least give you a baseline of where to start, team.
That's right. You're going to get super close. You're going to find a 69 kV transformer, and it's very close to your 144 kV transformer. So at least you've been accelerated, like Bob says.
The other thing, I think there's a question in the chat about searchability. I mean, Darren, you just proved that fact right there is, let me check, and typed in, went to the library, looked, here's the transformer. So that's what also makes this extremely useful. All that content, if you can't find anything, doesn't do you much good.
I don't know if it's something I should share, Ray. I know we're all on the screen here, but do you think there's any value in sharing that quickly, or?
I think that's extremely valuable, Darren. If you could show that real quick. I think a lot of people can get overwhelmed. The size of the library, it is so massive. It is so comprehensive that if you could give them just a taste of that real quick.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. So I'll make sure I share the right screen. We show this and I hit share. So yeah, this is the Reliability Strategies library. Just from a starting point, I'm just inside Maximo. So I'm inside manage. We'll just let this come up. Your typical manage, your work orders, your, everything that you're used to using. And if I do a quick search here, I can see that Reliability Strategies is just part of the applications that I have access to based on my security profile. So it comes up very similar to what Steve has shown. I can select my asset. I can obviously do smart searches. So the question came up, are there transformers in there? And that's literally all I did. I looked at the second category by asset type, CTs, PTs, power transformers, and then I started looking at my configuration. So liquid filled, solid bearing, load center based transformers. I get my strategy. I find out there's 45 possible ways that this asset could fail. So again, you think about the effort that would take as a reliability team, sitting in a room, looking at through documentation, looking at OEM information, maybe dissecting the transformer yourself to determine all the possible ways it could fail. I mean, it takes months and months and months. And the outcome of that is there is actually 5 mitigation activities that you could put in place. So I look and I see things like the bushings could fail. There could be gasket failures. There could be gauge temperature issues. Pressure relief valve could fail. So I can kind of look into each of these, understand the way that they fail, but then put in place my mitigation strategy. So I know this is minor criticality. It's a low duty cycle and it's in a mild environment. So I see that I can do thermography every 2 years. I can have an engineer walk down every 3 months. I can set up a strategy for doing daily operator rounds, complete reconditioning at recommendation, and oil screening. So my oil testing every 2 years. And it does a really good job of identifying. So what does a 2-year oil test look like? Well, you're doing oil screening. You're going to set up a PM for a 2-year frequency. Should take about an hour. And then if you actually want the job plan details of how you actually do that, it's all defined here. So you do screening, you do a visual inspection. I mean, it's laying out the steps. And it's really nice too that you can copy this information and then actually open Maximo's job plan application so you can start to put that information in. And this integration is going to mature over time as well. So that it'll auto-populate. That's obviously where they want to go with this strategy. So you can kind of see how it plays down. Find my asset, find something close. If it's not exact, maybe I duplicate the strategy, create my own. But in the end, I'm going to get, you know, a pretty comprehensive job plan library and also a PM schedule, put it in play, associated with my assets.
So Darren, really, you could have reliability light. Like as you choose your strategy, you could take an asset and go, God, I'm getting this asset into the plant. I'm going to go build this job plan based on this information and content. You don't have to do everything on it. You could just literally use it for the job plan building. Is that?
That's right. Yeah, if you want to get up and running quick, you know, that relieves that bottleneck. You're going to have your PM and your job plan strategy in place. And then of course it goes back to what Steve said. Well, you know, I can go back and look at that strategy and determine failure modes and start, you know, doing problem cause remedy. I can look at the classification structure that we saw right here. So that all builds backwards as you're ready to mature over time. But if you want to get up and running and make sure you're compliant with, you know, asset reliability, that's a really quick way to get up and going.
Well, and if I'm a Cliff Notes type of person, and let's say that I'm trying to troubleshoot an asset, I could actually use the library to go in and do troubleshooting, even though I don't have it set up. I could go and say, oh, I've got this asset that failed, and then go look at the failure codes and go, I wonder if it's any one of these things. Is that a simple thing?
You come up with creative ideas all the time, Ray. Yeah, it's a totally good use case. Why not? If you don't have anything set up, just use a library as a reference tool. 100%.
Yeah. And what
Absolutely.
I think may happen is AI gets infused into this. So then AI is going to the reliability library, pulling the possible failures out of that information to give you context of what could be troubling your asset. I think that's one of the places that IBM's heading with these small language libraries that can then be used to provide contextual information based on actual information, just as opposed to exposing to the entire web. Well, that's
I need to step in here because we're right up against the clock. But I want to thank Aquitas and Steve, Ray, and Darren for joining the webcast today. This has been fantastic, guys. As we said at the beginning, some of this dates back years that I had a hand in helping bring to market. It's exciting to see the development and how far it's come. And I know when you're working with your customers, you're going to see this next generation go, especially when it starts, you can just hit a button and auto-populate the work order that we know we're going to get a taste of at Maximo World when they start showing us what's in development for the upcoming releases, Ray.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Bob. It's great to have the historical reference too. So
it
awesome.
Is, yeah.
Thanks for leading us here.
All right. Well, we want to thank Aquitas for bringing all of this knowledge to the table today. We tried to get to as many of the questions as we could. If there's a few we didn't get to, the team will answer via email. And we look forward to seeing everybody at Maximo World coming up here in a few weeks and on another upcoming Reliabilityweb TV webinar. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.